Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to do an in-depth setup and review for this Vangoa powered pedal board. So full disclaimer, the manufacturer actually sent me a free one of these to test out. And since I've been looking for a pedal board that has built-in isolated power for a long time, I decided to give this one a try. We're going to take a look at the pros and cons of this pedal board, and I'm going to give you my honest review. I'll put an Amazon link in the description where you can buy this. But before we begin, remember to like and subscribe for punk, rock, and grunge style guitar lessons and more equipment reviews like these. And here we go. All right, so some of the features of the Vangoa pedal board are that it's got a solid aluminum frame. There's no welds, so it's really durable and it's pretty light for the size of it. It's got an isolated power supply that is supposed to be noise-free, so we'll try that out and see if it's actually noise-free. It's got 10 9-volt inputs, a 12-volt, and an 18-volt input. And it's got this little dial, this potentiometer for your input volume, so you can actually adjust how much of your signal is going in so that you're not overloading the circuit, which helps reduce noise too. It also has an on-off switch, which I really like. Some pedal boards don't have that switch, and so you have to unplug the DC power supply every time you want to turn it off. All right, so let's open the box and see what's included. So the pedal board comes in this tote case, and inside the case we've got some instructions and some Velcro strips to attach the pedals to the board. There's also some power cables to run from your pedals to the power supply and an AC adapter. And then lastly, there's the pedal board itself. So to set up the pedal board, I started by peeling the Velcro strips and applying them to the top of the board. And then I cut the other side of the Velcro strips into smaller pieces and put them on the bottom of the pedals. And then I placed the pedals on the board where I wanted them. Then ran the power cables from the pedal to the power supply for each one. And then lastly, I ran patch cables between each pedal. My finished setup looked like this. Here's a look at the schematic on how they suggest you set up your pedal board. I think this is the best way to set it up because it allows you to use that potentiometer to adjust your input volume so that you're not overloading the circuit. So you can see that I ran the output from my guitar cable to the input on the top of the board. Then I ran another cable from the output on the top of the board into the input of the first pedal. After plugging into the amp, I decided to test to see how much noise we have with the pedal board off. So this gives us a baseline, and then now with the pedal board on, I couldn't really tell a difference either way. The next step in the setup is to adjust the potentiometer to get to the perfect level. So we want to set the potentiometer all the way down to 0, and then we're going to play a guitar chord as loud as we think we're going to be, and we're going to slowly rise it up until it gets to the top of that green. We don't want much yellow, and definitely not any red. Once that step is complete, you're ready to go. All right, so let's go over the pros first. I really liked the built-in power supply. My old pedal board had an external power supply that was hard to kind of mount, and it was just difficult to use. I really like the built-in power supply. It's just one less thing to have to worry about. Another pro is that there's plenty of inputs with different power options. You've got 10 9-volt, one 12-volt, and one 18-volt, which seems like more than enough for most people. Another pro is the potentiometer to dial in your input volume. I felt like this is really helpful to avoid unwanted noise and overloading your circuit. I also like the on-off power switch, which makes it just kind of easy to turn off and on without having to take the 9-volt power out. And then the last pro I had is the aluminum housing was lightweight and it felt like super durable. It felt like this thing could be beat around and it would really hold up well. So one con I had for it is the shape of the pedal board. If you'll notice, it's kind of deep as opposed to long. I prefer like a longer, maybe slightly less deep pedal board. I feel like when you have pedals kind of stacked like this, it can sometimes be hard to access and press the ones that you want to. While I like the overall size because it gives you some flexibility, I would have preferred it to be like a little wider. And I think Vangoa actually has some different size pedal boards, one that's smaller than this and one that's larger than this. So you can probably find a shape that matches your needs. And then another con I had, which is kind of the reverse of the pro I had, is the built-in power supply. So a built-in power supply is great. It's easy to use. The problem is when the power supply goes, then it can be a problem trying to replace it or having to deal with that. You might not have enough room to put a new power supply in. So again, that's just me being kind of picky because the selling point for this is the built-in power supply. But also you should understand that if the power supply goes, then you might end up with a pedal board you can't really use too well. So overall, I give this pedal board a 9.0. It's really a big improvement on my previous pedal board. I really like the built-in power supply, and I feel like it's super durable. Again, the only downside was the shape for me. So if you want to try one of these out, I have an Amazon link in the description. I do get a small commission if you purchase through there, and it does help support the channel. And also check out my beginner guitar course up on my website, scottobryanguitar.com. I have a 10-video course that takes you from scratch, like never playing guitar before, all the way up to rock and roll proficiency in like short, easy steps, easy to follow videos. So that's it for this one. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you guys next time.